Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, a resource to help your ministry take the next step. Whether you're leading a team, developing leaders, or preparing for what's ahead, this podcast is here to equip you with real conversation, practical tools, and insights from ministry leaders who've been there. I'm Hunter Melton, the campus and teaching pastor at the church at Woodbine, and today we're talking about how we identify and equip lay leaders, those who feel called to ministry, even if it doesn't look like a traditional vocational path. I'm joined today by Roger Severino, who leads our leadership development efforts across the board, and Matt Purdom, our executive pastor of our South region and a longtime voice in groups and discipleship. All right, well, let's jump in. Roger, Matt, guys, thank you so much for being here. Before we get started in the great content, would love to know just a little bit more about you all, what God is doing in your ministry area. So, Roger, what is God doing in our leadership development across our campuses? How are you?
Yeah, doing great. I serve as Minister of Leadership Development across all 9 campuses, and that includes things like our ministry residency, our bivocational residency, the seminary classes we offer. We have certain lay leader courses like TNT, and then other just general efforts, and we try to help our campuses and our pastors think through a leadership pipeline, meaning how do we identify, equip, and then deploy people in spiritual service.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You've been a great friend to me over the years, and grateful for you, Roger, and all that you are doing for our 9 campuses. So, Matt, brother, so grateful that you are here. God has just moved you into a new role here. So just tell us a little bit about what God's doing in your life now and your heart for developing leaders and raising them up.
Yeah, thank you, Hunter. So I've become the South Region Executive Pastor. So just oversight with 4 campuses, just making sure all of our campuses are aligned to our mission and vision. I report to John Joseph, who is our South Region pastor. And so just getting a feel for everything. It's early. I just came from the group side of things here at the Brentwood campus, and so really pumped. We have great campuses, great preaching, great discipleship, so just adjusting to that role.
Now, for those who are listening today and are not familiar with our leadership structure, tell us, what is the South region? How is that different from a North region or a West region? So those kinds of things.
Yeah, so we have 3 regions here at Brentwood and our Brentwood church. So we have a North region, which has several campuses, and we have the Brentwood campus, and then we have 4 campuses in our South region. Yeah. So all of our campuses combined is one big church. Yeah. And that's Brentwood Baptist.
Yeah, that's a lot of leaders to develop. That's a lot of people to bring up. It's a lot of staff to develop, but also just when you think about 9 campuses, there's a lot of lay leaders, because a church like ours cannot depend on professionals to do the work, right? Yeah. We are called to equip. And so today we are talking about that. We're talking about how do we raise up leaders? And I would think your context is different than mine, and Roger's is different than ours as well. But the one thing that we all have in common is that we need to develop leaders. Absolutely. And we need to raise them up. And so for our context, or for our kind of context for today, for our conversation, I'd love to just start off with, when you think about leader development, when you think about equipping those that God has called, I'd love to just start like a 30,000 perspective kind of foot. How do you, and we'll start over here with Matt, how do you define the word calling?
Yeah, that's a great question, Hunter. Yeah, it's one of those words that can be a little ambiguous in nature. So I kind of look at it at 2 angles. Like, right, there's a specific calling towards salvation, right? And then there's a general calling throughout Scripture about a call to minister. Whether it's like partnering in the Great Commission, whether it is calling to serve, whatever it is calling to go abroad, so I look at calling in those 2 unique ways.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Roger, how have you experienced that? How have you seen calling in people's lives?
Yeah, very, very similarly. I feel like God calls us to follow Him. That's the general calling that all believers have. And then some are specifically called to certain areas, including vocational ministry, those who give themselves, are able to give themselves full-time to the work of the church, or maybe part-time to the work of the church. And, I've heard somebody say it this way: we're all called to full-time Christian ministry, regardless of where our paycheck comes from. Yeah. So that might be another thing I'd throw in.
Yeah. I think when we're looking at church members, I think sometimes what we have to have as ministers is kind of that eye for development, that eye for leadership. So, Matt, you did that for a long time in our young adult ministry at Kairos for many years. When you were looking at someone who you thought might be gifted or called to ministry, whether for professionally or to raise up as a lay leader, what were some things that you looked for in maybe characteristics or those kinds of things in someone?
Yeah. I like how you touched on the characteristics. I mean, the big thing is character, right? You know, what kind of character do they bring to the table first? You know, are they teachable? Do they have integrity? You know, do they have a passion for what they're being called to, or what you may be inviting them to that may clarify their calling? So I think those things, teachable, integrity, and passion, are huge on my list.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Roger, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, you know, I've been influenced some by Mac Lake. I'll give it a shout out to his book, Multiplication Effect. But one of the things he says, my 5 C's may be a little bit different than his, but character, competency, calling, commitment, and culture. So character, you know, you have to have the kind of character that Christ wants. None of us are perfect, we understand that. But for a call to spiritual leadership, it is a call to higher standard. Competency, do they have the basic skill, or can they be trained in the skill that's needed to be performed? But sometimes they have the character and they have the competency, but they don't feel called to it, or maybe they're not willing to make the commitment that role requires. And then the final question might be culture. Do they fit kind of the way that we do things? Do they fit our values and the way we do our ministry? And so those might be 5 things that I look for in identifying people for leadership. And let me give you one more. I also read a book by Patrick Lencioni called The Ideal Team Player. And there, I love what he says. He says, we're looking for people who are humble, hungry, and smart. And by smart, he means smart relationally, not emotional EQs. So humble, you know, do people, are they teachable? Are they willing to do things with a teachable spirit and a humble attitude? Hungry, do they have that work ethic that's required to do it? And then, you know, ministry is about people. Can they relate to people in a way that honors God and honors others?
Yeah, that's really good. And again, the one thing that we all have in various ministry contexts is that we have to develop people.
Absolutely.
And so knowing what you're going to look for is, I think for me, it keeps me from just looking at somebody and saying, well, you're a warm body, come here and do this, right? It keeps me from being less just desperate to fill a spot, and more of seeing it as what we've talked about as in our some of the leadership things that we've done, is you're seeing it as discipleship just as much as you're seeing it as leadership development. So let's say that you have someone that you in your congregation that you say, man, they've got the 5 C's that I've looked for. They've got the integrity, the character that I think is necessary. They can do it. How do we make it easier for people in our churches to say yes to leadership positions and to leadership opportunities? Like, what are some roadblocks that we can kind of clear out of the way? What are some things that we can do to make it easier for a lay leader to say yes, to step into those opportunities? Roger?
Yeah. You know, first of all, I think you look for easy on-ramps in the ministry. You know, some ministries will require very specific things, like if you're a really gifted teacher or something. But there are other ways that in a life group or some other ministry where there are roles that are a little bit easier. Maybe it's, hey, if you're willing to serve, can you just we need somebody just to take attendance for our time together. Or we need somebody to plan our mission journey or our fellowship time. I would just brainstorm about easy ways to get people involved. I think part of it is cultivating the mindset that we're all here to serve God and His kingdom and God's people. And so what are the ways that we can do that? Another thing that might help is just be very clear about what you're asking people to do. Sometimes it's helpful to have just a job description. I'm a big believer in just keeping things clear and concise. So I'm not talking about a book job description, but even a one-page description of, hey, here's what we're asking you to do, here's what we're asking you to do, and here's the time commitment that's involved. And so maybe just removing those barriers of uncertainty, removing those barriers of lack of opportunity to give our people opportunities to jump in and serve.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Matt, what would you say? What have been been effective for clearing roadblocks for leaders?
Yeah, I echo a lot what Roger said there too. I think another aspect is the modeling portion. So what we're asking people to do, can you yourself be that model for them to take them with you? You know, kind of like the way Jesus was selecting the 12 in the Gospel of Mark in chapter 3, you know, he invited them to be with him.
Yeah.
So I think that's a key component. So when they're with you and they're seeing how the ministry is to be done, then pulling them aside to debrief.
Yeah.
You know, hey, what'd you catch? What questions do you have? You know, it's just that, and I know it's hard to take time out and to model, and, you know, the tyranny of the urgent in ministry is always upon us. But I really feel that modeling component is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. You know, to me, it seems like a great injustice that oftentimes our people experience a lot better training for what they're being asked to do in secular environments. And I just don't think many people do well in ambiguity. And one of the ways that I have found, and you touched upon this, Matt, was to develop leaders. The best way to do that is to circle back and to say, how did it go?
Yeah.
You know, and too many times I'm guilty of just giving people some training and then sending them out. And then my next point of contact with them is when something goes wrong, not with for a discipling kind of opportunity to say, hey, what went right here and how can we reinforce that? You know, what is it? You can't expect what you don't inspect, you know? And so I think that's one of the, for us, continual ongoing leadership development is just as important as the way that you launch them out, you know? So,
Yeah, no, I mean, that is such a good point that you just mentioned, the continual investment.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times we'll just onboard someone and then just like, okay, it's yours. But knowing how much that we've got to emotionally support them, prayerfully support them, check in on them, check their heart, all those important ingredients to keep them persevering.
Amen. Because at the end of the day, our highest stated goal in what we're doing cannot be to make the programs work.
Ah, that's so good.
It's the programs are the vehicle
That's right.
for leader development.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I love our church leadership development structures. I'm a product of that. I hopped in to the Brentwood Baptist ecosystem in 2017 as a ministry resident. So thanks be to God for that. And so, Roger, tell us a little bit about the kinds of tools, the programs that we have specifically here at Brentwood, just in case somebody's listening and wants to know what's out there. What do we offer?
Sure. Like in a general sense, if you're involved with the ministry, then that minister, let's say you're a worship leader and you're involved with that, your life group leader in Matt's old role, you know, they're going to give you certain skills and opportunities to practice that. So those are very specific role specific. In a general way, some of the things that we do are the seminary classes that we offer. We offer seminary classes through Southeastern Seminary, where someone can come in and get a master's degree through just the seminary classes that we offer, which is pretty cool. Yeah. We have the ministry residency program where men and women come and spend 2 years full-time with us in ministry residency. Hunter, you're a product of that. Yeah. We're very thankful to have you be a part of that. This year, we have launched a bivocational residency program. Okay. These are people who feel a call to ministry, but also feel a call to continue their job. And so that has gone remarkably well for us, and we've seen people passionately serving Christ in that bivocational way. We have certain lay training courses, such as our TNT, Timothy, and Titus class, which is an academic year of leadership development where they do biblical studies and they do theology. They talk about ministry in the 21st century, and they talk about spiritual leadership. So those are some of the ways that our church is providing leadership development.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, making an impact across Middle Tennessee. If someone who is watching this wanted to find out a little bit more information, maybe contact you,
they can.
What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can contact me, of course, Severino, Severino, at BrentwoodBaptist.com. But you can also go on our website. It's BrentwoodBaptist.com/MTLI. That stands for Middle Tennessee Leadership Institute. And that page will have everything that I just described.
That's great. That's great. Both of you, obviously, Roger as the ministry residency director, but Matt, you have a heart for raising up lay leaders or even leaders for the church, which means you've spent a lot of time around our ministry residency program. So this kind of is question is for both of y'all. What have you learned through the residency program about equipping leaders, leaders, about coaching, and about the next generation of leaders and what they need when it comes to entering vocational ministry?
Yeah, I think the big thing is time. I think it's like time in the sense of helping them to lead themselves well.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like their time in the Word, making sure they sustain that and it's enriching and it's relevant and it's significant to their growth. I think talking about that with them, even getting to kind of open up in the sense of like, how could they improve in those areas in their theological education? I mean, just being available, and then, being able to help them, with ministry issues that come about, that availability. Because, as leading, we sometimes feel like we're all on an island stranded, and nobody's dealing with these issues as we're learning ministry. And, so just being that listening ear has been huge for a lot of residents.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Roger, what about you, brother?
I'd say a lot of the same thing. A lot of our ministry residents, they'll come in and they're young and they're excited and they have certain gifting, which is all good. We want that. We want them to become excited. We want them with certain gifting. But they sometimes realize that, boy, it really does take time to learn ministry and to learn what it means to work in a church, to have the humility to work there, to persevere, when things get hard, because ministry, as we know, is hard. And they'll hit that first bump in the road, and they're like, oh gosh, what have I gotten myself into? And learning resilience and perseverance. And a lot of that is time. Those 2 years are not wasted. I can tell almost without exception, I can see the growth and the difference of a ministry resident when they first come in and they're eager, which is great. We want them to be eager, but then they go through the maturity process, sometimes through difficulties. Yep. But I can tell that 2 years later, the maturity that they've experienced that made them much better prepared for vocational ministry.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, speaking as a former resident myself, I mean, apprenticeship, friendship, knowing that somebody who does it better than me but also cares about me. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that not kind of in the way of Jesus, right? Is to be a disciple is to be a student of someone. And to be in a position where for 2 years you can just simply say, it's okay to fail. And my highest priority here is to learn and to watch. Mm-hmm. I knew going into the ministry residency, maybe this is a promo for our ministry residency, that the rate of which men and women were dropping out of ministry so soon after graduating a theological degree or getting into ministry, I knew I wasn't better than those people. And so what I needed was to come and to kind of incubate for a little bit and to find a home. Mm-hmm. Before I needed to find a home. Mm-hmm. And so when I tell people about getting into ministry, are you in a place where people know you enough to say, I see this in your character? I think those I see in you conversations, to have somebody to say, I see this in you, I affirm this in you, and now you're launched for a lifetime of faithfulness. What a gift.
Yes.
Hunter, can I say from like learning on the executive side how invaluable a residency is? Right? Because people, we're talking about calling earlier. The Lord just calls people in different seasons, and just having kind of a residency is an opportunity for those who have been through the process, that know your church's DNA, your culture, that, we can call up a previous resident, or, there may be one that's about to finish their time in the residency, just how invaluable that is, in some sense, to do triage for certain ministries that need immediate attention.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, again, we don't want to be caught in a position where we're having to be desperate, right? Because we haven't developed leaders. But we want to come in a position to say, hey, we have seen this in you, and this is a perfect opportunity to step into your next development.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we know that this podcast reaches a lot of ministry leaders. We know in September we'll be able to welcome a lot of them onto our campus. But for the ministry leader who is listening right now, maybe they have someone in their context who they say, all right, let's tap them on the shoulder. Give just a real practical, real tangible, what's the one thing that they should be doing today or tomorrow to kind of engage that leader in the next steps?
I would say that I'll end up with a practical, but let me start with a mindset.
Sure.
And maybe this is practical, but understand that if you're in ministry, you're in the people development business. I heard a pastor down in West Palm Beach, Florida, make that comment. He said, if you are a worship leader today, then God has placed you in that context to develop people. Mm-hmm. And so if you're a minister today, you are called to develop people. I believe, you guys know this, I believe there's a huge overlap between multiplying disciples and developing leaders. Now, I think there are some distinctions between those two, but just as when we multiply leaders, we're investing in someone so that they can in turn invest in others. In the same way, when we are developing leaders, we're investing in that person. Think about Paul when he writes to Timothy and he says, the things you've heard me say among many witnesses, commit to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. Well, is that discipleship? Yeah, you can say that's a form of discipleship, but it's certainly leadership development, right? It's Paul passing it on to Timothy, who's supposed to develop other faithful men who could then teach others also. And so number one is know that if you are in ministry, if you're a minister, your role is to be a people developer, which means a leader developer. So I would say that. And then secondly, think about opportunities within your context, whether, I don't know if you're a solo pastor in charge of a whole church or whether you're, maybe a very specific role at a church, whatever the sphere of the scope of your responsibilities are, you are not called to do that work by yourself. Yeah. I believe in that Ephesians 4 idea that God raises up leaders in the church to equip God's people for the work of service. So think about the opportunities to unleash God's people for the work of the ministry. And because it's not meant to be a staff-led or a pastor-led thing. It's supposed God's given those giftings and those abilities to all of his people. I mentioned giftings. You might want to start with a study on spiritual gifts. Yeah. And you might want to consider people's passions and their sense of where they want to serve, and then just begin asking people, taking them out to lunch, taking them to coffee, and say, "Hey, what is God doing in your life? Where where is it that you feel like He might want you to serve Christ in His kingdom? Whether it's within the walls of the church or outside the walls of the church, create the context where there's an expectation. We are all called to serve in Christ in some way."
Yeah, that's good. That's great. That's great. Matt, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, if you're leading, are you thinking about a leadership pipeline?
Yeah.
Are you thinking about where's the vision of where you'd like this particular ministry? It could be a ministry about giving. What is the leadership pipeline to help our people be generous in all aspects of their life that has multiplicative results in which they are then passing their life on to others in a giving and sacrificial way? Preschool, groups ministry, like every ministry can have a potential leadership pipeline.
Yeah.
So,
come on.
Yeah.
That's so good. And it's not, we're not adding anything to anybody's plate, right? We're really kind of stacking the deck with leaders who have been poured into. And I just don't think people want to feel like they're being used, right? I think people want to feel like they're being developed. And the difference between those two things really starts with our intentionality of saying, before the need was there, we saw this in you.
Yes.
And what a gift that would be. I'm a young leader, and meaning I'm in my mid-30s, but I've been a part of our system since I was in my mid-20s. And what a gift it was to have people, honestly, you two are great examples of this, of somebody saying, I see this in you, and calling that out. And so let's honor our people by seeing in them what God sees in them. So, okay, as we wrap up today, give us kind of a 20-second, what's one encouragement that you would give to, maybe this is someone listening to this and they're at a certain level of leadership, whether in the church or outside of the church, and they're ready for the next step of leadership, right? So it could be a lay leader, I'm ready to step into something in the church, or it could be I'm at this level of ministry and I want to go to the next level of ministry. What's one encouragement that you would say to that person? Matt, we'll start with you.
Yeah. I would say explore that call. Don't don't be fearful in it. I mean, the Lord will provide, and then explore education, theological education, get a mentor, one that you can be transparent with in all aspects of life. Wrestle with that sin that's holding you back. Hold God's word to your heart. I'm giving you a laundry list of it.
I love it. Keep going.
But hold God's word to your heart that you can extinguish those lies that Satan tries to prevent you from having a maximum impact in the kingdom of God and building his church.
Oh, come on, Matt. That's good. I think everybody needs to hear that. Yeah, continuously. Yes, Roger.
If someone is wrestling with a call to perhaps vocational ministry, I usually share my own story and how God used certain things, principles in my life, and people have often found that helpful. So in my own journey, when I was working at a bank coming out of college, and I was a loan officer, and I had thought about ministry since high school, but just wasn't sure, and just entered into a season of real prayer and seeking God. Here are some of the things that I did. I said, I thought, let me do, I think what John Ortberg now calls a low-cost probe. I didn't know that term at the time, but what he talks about is, while in my case, while the bank is paying my salary, let me use as much of my discretionary time as I can to throw myself in ministry, to test that calling. So I got involved with the ministry. I took on some leadership roles. I had a sense of, okay, this is what it feels like to throw myself in. So if I'm going to do this, full time, perhaps someday, I want to have some sense of what I'm getting into. So I would encourage that. Secondly, the scriptures talk about seeking godly counsel, and so I sought my pastor, I sought out my campus minister, some other friends of mine who were in ministry just a little bit ahead of me, a little bit older, and I said, I'm sensing perhaps a call to ministry. I'm not sure. Would you pray with me? But give me feedback. What do you see in me? Where might you caution me if I missed this? And so I try to seek that feedback, and then the third thing, I'd heard someone say one time that, if you can think of anything you'd rather do than vocational ministry, you should probably do that. And the idea behind that may sound silly or strange, but the idea behind it is ministry can be a very challenging, unique calling. And, you don't want to be working at the bank thinking, man, you don't want to be at the church, rather, thinking, man, I really wish I was back at the bank and that kind of a thing. And so, I went through a period of about a year where I did that. I would come home to my wife, Marianne, during that time, because during that time we were engaged and then married. And I'd say, well, maybe I'll get my MBA, or maybe I'll do this. And, I had such different ideas in mind. But the more that I thought, prayed, and discussed that, it just probably took a year or maybe even a little bit over that period of time. I finally came to the conclusion, I can't think of anything that I would rather do than vocational ministry that I feel God calling me to. Yeah. And so for me, the next step was to, at least in those days, to pack up and move to go to seminary. Now, these days, of course, online options, if you're in the Nashville area, we'd love for you to come here to our Southeastern classes that we offer. But that was the process that God used in my life, and not that those are principles that necessarily how He'll work in everybody's life, but I found that to be helpful for me.
Yeah, but I think the heart behind that is the same. Is, hey, look, if the Lord is calling you to, you need to pay attention to that.
Yes.
Like, pay attention, and then don't wait, but take baby steps or micro steps. Don't wait until somebody just says, hey, here's a paycheck to come work in the church.
That's right.
Because that's not the highest, that cannot be the highest stated goal of our calling, right? Which is to say, I'm going to go to a building and work at a church. The highest stated goal of our calling is obedience.
Absolutely.
So, well, guys, Matt, thank you so much. Matt and Roger, y'all are just wonderful examples of leadership development and of that being a lifestyle that you had. So I hope this conversation was helpful, and I can't wait to see the fruit that's going to come out of it. Yeah. Thanks so much, Roger and Matt, for your insight and the work that you're doing to develop leaders across our church. And thank you to you for listening to today's conversation. I hope that you can join us in just a few short weeks for the Elevate Conference, Tuesday, September 9th at Brentwood Baptist in Nashville, Tennessee. Check out elevatechurchconference.com for more details on the conference and upcoming events, and we will see you next time on the Elevate Podcast.